We're now going to make the swing hinged locket. So this is slightly different to the one with the 3 knuckles. What we're going to do for this is mark the locket, drill through, and then we will open up that hole. We're going to make a bail, and then we're going to rivet the pieces together using a piece of tube. And that way the locket will just swing open on the hinge. So the first thing that we want to do is work out where to drill the hole. So I'm just going to pop the 2 halves together and just have a look at them. Because we want to swing, we don't want to drill the hole too far down into the locket because we do want to be able to open it up. So we probably want to come down just off the very edge, so somewhere around here, because we're going to need to be able to get that hole all the way through. If we put it too close to the top, when we start to drill through, it's going to drill straight out through the top. So we just need to account for that. So I think looking at it, we just look at it from the top. I think if we sort of put it around about here, we should be able to drill all the way through without the drill coming anywhere near the top. So I'm just going to make a little mark here with my scribe, just so I know that that's where I want to drill from this side. I'm going to do it in 2 pieces, and I'll show you how I transfer the mark from this side across to here in a moment. The first thing to do is to pop this onto the wooden part of my bench pin, and then we're going to just drill through that. We're going to start off with quite a small drill bit, probably just under 1 mil. Probably use a 0.9 drill bit to go through to start with. And then what we're going to do is use some ball burrs to open up that hole so it's going to be wide enough for our tube to go through. And this is just the 1.6 mil outside diameter tube. I'm just going to use a small ball burr to create a little divot in the silver so that I'll be able to drill through easier. If this was a flat piece of silver, I'd use my centre punch or my scribe to actually just hammer a little divot into the silver, but because this is domed, if I do that, it will actually just collapse the piece. So instead, I'm just going to use a ball burr. I'm just going to do this by hand because all we're doing is just creating a little indent there for the drill to kind of catch into. I want to go at this angle because I'm going to be drilling straight down, not through to the back. So I'm just going to use this and start to create a little divot. Basically just gives the drill bit something to catch into. It doesn't need to be a massive hole. It's just to help it not skip across the piece as you're trying to drill down into it. That should be okay. As I said, I'm going to start with a fairly small drill bit. It's easier to start with a smaller drill bit and then open the piece up rather than trying to go straight in with a thicker drill bit. You'll be more successful if you start with a small one and work your way up. I'm just going to put some lubricant onto the drill bit. So this is a Pepe Tools blade butter. So this works really well for saw blades and also for your drills. So just put that in. And then we're going to hold this and we're going to drill straight down. So I'm going to use my finger as a brace to make sure that the drill's not going to skip. And we're just going to try and hold it as straight up as possible. You can see that's just starting to go through the metal. You can adjust slightly if you don't think it's going through at a straight angle. You don't need to be pushing down on the drill bit, you just want to let it do the work itself and just wait for that to drop through. There we go. So that's the initial hole drilled through there. What I'm going to do next is just move on to a slightly bigger drill bit, just to open this up a little bit more. Again, just a little bit of lubricant onto the drill bit, and that helps it go through the metal a lot easier. And using the same angle to just open up that hole. You see that went through a lot easier the second time. We could just keep going up using drill bits if we've got them up to the correct size. So we'll go up another size of drill bit. Just into the blade lubricant. And then we can just come through with a bigger drill bit. So you can see just going up in size incrementally, it just is a lot easier than trying to do it all in one go. Just keep a good hold on this because you don't want this to spin. There we go. If your piece does get stuck and starts to spin, just take your foot off the foot pedal immediately and it'll stop it from going. So let's try that again. Okay, so that's starting to open that up. But we can see that's probably still not going to be quite big enough for the tube, so we'll just see where we are with that. Yeah, it's not far off, but it still needs to be a little bit wider. So again, we'll just come in with a slightly larger drill bit. Keep it at the same angle, so it's going to go across nice and straight. Okay, there we go. Let's just clean that off. And again, we'll see how close we are to the size of the tube. Okay, we're really not far off there. So what I'm going to do, oh, actually, that's just popped through. That's perfect. That's a really tight fit. So what I'm going to do is just open up this hole very, very slightly. And I'm going to do that by using a ball burr again. So I'm just going to choose a slightly larger ball burr and just open that hole up really, really gently. We don't want it to be too big because then we won't get a nice tight rivet in there. Right, let's have a quick look. So let's just check that. So this ball burr doesn't fit through. I think if we open it up that much, that's going to be a bit too loose. So I'm just going to go a couple of sizes down. Let's try this one. Yeah, that looks like it's going to be about right. It's got a little bit of play in there, but it's more or less the size that this hole is. So when we go through with the ball burr, it'll just open up the sides a little bit. I'll pop that into my pendant motor, add a little bit of the lubricant, and then we'll come in again. And again, we want to make sure that we're going straight down and not in at an angle. There we go. So the ball burr just opens that up a little bit more. And that's a nice fit for the tube. Okay, so the way we're going to work out where we need to drill on the other side is to use a Sharpie marker. I'm going to colour in the end of the tube. So I'm going to get a really good layer of Sharpie on the end of the tube. And then I'm going to put my two halves back together. And then I'm going to put my tube through. I'm making sure that it's level. I'm just going to twist it against the other side. And then, oops, yeah, hopefully when I pull this back out, we'll see the mark on the other side. We can see where that Sharpie mark is. It's just here. It's a bit tricky, reflection. So the Sharpie mark's just there. So what I want to do is just use a pair of calipers and measure where that's coming up to. And then what I'll do, it's really, really small. So it's going to be, that's going to be around about the centre. And I'm just going to set those calipers. And then I'm going to make sure that I can transfer that mark onto the front side. So we know that this is where it does become a little bit sort of by eye, but we know that from the side it was roughly this far in. So we just transfer the mark across so you can see where that mark is. Just double check. So sort of put them side by side. And that looks like they're going to be about right to get that drilled through. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start with a ball burr just to make a little indent on the side. So I'll just do that by hand. So I just make a little mark there. Just start it off there. Just kind of pressing that into the metal, and that just makes a little dent. And it's just so that you can get something for the drill bit to grasp onto. Doesn't need to be much. It should do. And then we start with a small drill bit. And the same as the other side, I'll just work my way up through the sizes of drill bit and then onto the ball burr to open it out. So what I'm going to do now is drill through this side exactly the same way as I did the other, so working up from a small drill bit up to the biggest size drill bit that I've got, and then opening the hole out using a ball burr. I've got both sides of my locket drilled through, and we'll just check to make sure that that hangs nicely. So we're just going to put this piece of tube through. So I'll go in from one side, and then we'll just pop that through the other. You can see that that goes through nicely, and the locket can swing open and closed. So the next thing that we're going to do is cut a bail, which will go over the top here, and the tube will come through each side of the bail, which will then rivet to close it. To cut my bail, I've got a piece of 0.4mm sterling silver sheet. You could use a little thicker. I probably wouldn't go up more than about 0.6, 0.7. It just becomes a little bit tricky to actually form at that point. Because it's a bail, it's not going to be holding a great deal of weight either with this locket, so this thickness of metal should be absolutely fine. I'm actually going to use a template to draw out my bail. You can freehand this, but I found that a template is a really good idea. So what I'm going to do is just use the Locket itself, and I'm going to have a quick look on the templates to see which one is going to be the best fit. So I think I like this shaped one. There's some really fancy ones on here, but I think that might be a bit much. So I'm just going to use a fairly simple shape. This is actually a template from Cool Tool, which is a metal clay maker. So you can get lots and lots of different templates, and they've got some really nice bale shapes on here. So we're going to use this one, and I'm going to transfer that onto my piece of sheet metal. So I'm just going to pop that down, and I'm going to use my scribe to just transfer the design. To do this, you could use your scribe, you can use a fine tipped Sharpie, whatever you find easiest to get your pattern onto the metal. Just make sure that that line is really nice and going to be obvious to cut round. Okay, and you can see that line transferred onto that metal. So I'm just going to pierce this out using my jeweler's saw, and then we can drill it and form it to make the bale for the locket. So I'm always moving the metal rather than the saw blade, and keeping a really loose grip on my saw. And by doing that, you run less risk of the saw blade snapping. Just always try and keep your fingers behind the saw blade, because if it jumps, it's less likely to land in your finger. I'm going to just take that off at the end. There we go. We can just turn that piece and carry on from this side. I'm just going to wipe my fingers because I've got the saw blade lubricant on there, which makes them a little bit slippy. Just get that. Got it. Oops. Smaller, faster movements to turn the corners. And then back to using as much of the blade as possible to saw through the majority. I'm just following that line as closely as possible. And if it does go off course a weeny bit, we can always clean it up with a file afterwards. So I've got that last corner, so we'll just turn the piece. So marching on the spot to turn that around. And then back following that line. go. So there's our bail pierced out, and I'm just going to go in and tidy these edges up with a file just to make sure we've got a nice neat edge.